Hi, and welcome to Course Miracles class and Course Miracles in general. I don't know where you're at, if you've ever heard of the course or studied it. I want this video to be really quick, informative for you. We have people that new joining every week, and obviously can't, as a facilitator, cover and go over some of the basic stuff every week. There's people in the class that have been with me for many years. We've gone through the whole book together, and then maybe this is the first time you're hearing of it. So I want to just give you a little bit about myself. My name's Chris DeSanti, and I've been fortunate to be one of the facilitators of A Course in Miracles. There's many around the world. There's a lot of people that the course has changed their life like it has mine. And I've been really fortunate to discover it very early on. We've been teaching it. And when I say teaching it, I'm really a student of the course because the course itself is the teacher. It's a channeled work. I'll tell you a little bit about that as well. And I came across it really early on, but I didn't understand it early on for myself. I used to love some of the quotes I would hear from it, and then I go read it and go, "What the heck is this?" And, in my late 20s, I had a teacher in a meditation class, and I ended up facilitating classes as well back then, and for my late 20s at the time, and I've really been facilitating every week since then. It's about 17 years, and I love it. It's one of my favorite things to talk about, read, and it's been so, instrumental in my own life. I want to give you a little bit about, you know, what you can expect, the class itself. We're going to cover each week different topics from A Course in Miracles, and in covering them, we obviously can't cover all of it. Now, there's a lot of categories in A Course in Miracles, or let's say distinctions. You can get a lot of the more specific talks about that through a podcast that those of you that know Nick and I have been doing for few months now, and it's really just to get this conversation out there. And the podcast, it's actually growing pretty fast. We're excited about it. It's on YouTube. It's called Sermons on the Couch, and it's all Course in Miracles. It's all free, and I go into the distinctions more. So maybe 10 minutes, and we might talk about special relationships or things like, sin versus error, or guilt, or the world and perception and the mind, the Holy Spirit, all of these things, which we're going to touch on weekly. Obviously, I'll probably pick things weekly to read from the book, but if you wanna learn it really in depth, a couple things you could do. Number 1, you wanna do the lessons. I'll talk about the lessons weekly, and there's a lesson, 1 a day for the entire year. I highly recommend starting and doing the lessons right away, and, we're doing them again now. It's probably my 5th time now, going through the lessons. So, you wanna do them. That's gonna give you a really good foundation for the text. The text could feel very daunting for people. And a little bit of background, Helen was a Freudian psychologist at Columbia, and Bill Thetford, who was the head of the department, they worked together for many years, and Helen's story is really fascinating. I highly recommend reading her, biography. You can get it online, and then they made I think, also a video, Absence from Felicity, as well, about Helen and her life, and Ken Wapnick put some of that stuff together. And her story is fascinating, and she channeled this as a channeled work, and she's a self-proclaimed militant atheist, so didn't believe in God at all, classically trained Freudian psychologist, and started to have psychic phenomenon happen to her that she really couldn't, explain. This was in 1965, the summer of 1965, and she started to have very interesting things like premonitions happen. A quick story, Bill would be on vacation, and she knew what the wallpaper looked like, and she would say to Bill, "Did you bring me back that thing that do you have that thing you brought me back from the trip?" And he'd go, "How the heck did you know? It was a surprise." So really interesting things happen, and you can imagine, as a Freudian psychologist, that was a no-no. They had no mystical or any sense at all. And she's like, Helen said, people thought, I channeled this like I was so peaceful and just channeling spirit. And she said it was nothing like that at all. She had interns barging in and out of her office. She was doing groups. They were working at that time with handicapped children, all kinds of stuff. And they had dealt with all kinds of really, psychological issues, but they start to realize that they, within themselves, were really, if lack of a better way to say that, they're themselves messed up. A lot of conflict in the department and at that time. And Helen just hears a voice. She started to have these premonitions, and she hears a voice one day. It says, "This is a Course in Miracles. Take notes." And she goes to Bill Thetford and is really scared, obviously, as you can imagine. And she said the voice is very distinct, and she called it the voice in the beginning. And she went to Bill. She was very good at shorthand, Helen. So she goes to Bill and goes, "I don't know what to do." And he said, "Well, why don't you take notes and we'll look at it every day?" And it was so difficult. Every morning, Helen would come in and read to Bill what she wrote. It was so challenging for her because that she would tremble because she didn't agree with any of the material. Could you imagine that? Channeling a body of work that you really didn't even agree with. And that was very, very difficult for you to even wrap your mind around and really live. And he says, take notes. So she would do shorthand. She said it was like someone dictating it to her. And she called it the voice. And she said it started to get clearer and clearer. And she ended up scribing this for 7 years. It's 3 books in one. And then she scribed the supplements a couple years later. And the 3 books in one is the text, the workbook for students, and the manual for teachers. There's also a clarification of terms that got added, and also some supplements, psychotherapy supplements, and what's called the Song of Prayer, which are all beautiful, that Helen channeled years later. And she eventually was like, who is this? And the voice said, it's Jesus. Now, you can imagine, as someone who was raised Jewish, had a fascination with Christianity very early on, but by her 20s became very intellectual, militant atheist, really an angry atheist. One of the things I love about Helen is she's from New York. I mean, she's like, you boil it down, a very smart, angry, intellectual, or cynical, if you want to call it that, intellectual from Manhattan. And her story, like I said, is fascinating. And you could tell that for Helen, her writing was a certain way. And when you read it, that she always wanted to be a world-class writer. You could tell her writing, and then you could tell what she channeled, because having obviously read this book many times, cover to cover myself, there's no way she wrote this body of work. It's so beyond. And, my background, if you've ever heard of me or met me or anything, you might not know me at all. Someone might have referred you to the class. I started with a lot of the gurus and teachers in India, and I've read many of the non-duality teachers coming out of India, and some of them were, I mean, absolutely brilliant and game-changing work. And still, I've never read anything that speaks on the level of A Course in Miracles. You could tell when you're reading it that it came from beyond this form. That's my experience. So I invite you to really, it's a lifelong study, so I invite you to dive in and think of it like learning a new language. It really helps to learn it from someone who knows the language. So in many ways, I'm a student. Think of me like a brother that's saying, hey, this is what I figured out or learned for myself. I'm in no way what I'm saying about it is true. I'm not interested in, you following me per se to learn it from me. Not like that at all. This is really, for me, I feel very fortunate to be able to just give this as something that's been so impactful for me. And I've also had people that I've learned from as well. So it's really a beautiful, beautiful teaching. People ask me all the time of what versions to get. There's a couple different versions. I would get the Foundation for Inner Peace, the 3rd edition, which has all the supplements. I'll use that in class a lot. Also get the Circle of Atonement version, which there's an app that's free. And I like the Circle of Atonement because you'll hear me talking about these cameos. And the cameos are some of Helen's earlier writings that never made it into A Course in Miracles, where Robert Perry from Circle of Atonement did a brilliant job of really interpreting these writings. And he gave his own interpretation of them, but it really builds a whole entire picture of Jesus. And I would say this is, if Course in Miracles, the movie, the cameos would be like the TV show, which gives you day to day, you get a sense of Helen's life. I highly recommend reading those as well. So that's the Circle of Atonement edition of A Course in Miracles. It's a purple cover. And then the Foundation for Inner Peace is a blue cover. And also you could join the Facebook group, which is Unity Through Miracles. I'll post the videos each week there. We're doing it with Unity Church from Jensen Beach. Reverend Julia it was really her idea of putting this all together. So we want to, sometimes we'll be talking about unity principles as well, which is they go hand in hand with Course in Miracles, and they're beautiful, really supplements. And Unity Through Miracles, that's on Facebook. So make sure to request to join that. And then I post all the videos each week to the group. So if you miss it, you could just watch it there. That Sermons on the Couch on YouTube and on Spotify. And that's where I would go. That's something you could listen to every day. You know, they're 10 minutes. And if you're doing the lessons and you're listening to those every day, and then you're going to class on Thursdays, you'll be learning the course very quickly. And then it's all about applying it in between those times and those moments. Looking forward to having you in class. Thank you for the opportunity to share this with you, and see you in class. See you in Sermons on the Couch, and may your life be a lot of miracles ahead for you.